I grew up in a quiet little town in Ohio. Pretty average stuff. 2 parents, 2 brothers, 1 house at the end of a cul-de-sac. We moved in when I was 14. I remember because it was right before my first year of high school, and I hated the idea of starting somewhere new. I kept telling myself it was just a house, just another place to sleep and eat and watch TV. I didn't know then that this house would change my life in a way I still can't explain. There were 5 of us, my parents, my older brother Max, my little brother Dylan, and me. From the outside, we looked like a normal family, but that house, it had something in it. Something that chose me. It started small. I didn't even realize it at first. One night during our first week there, we were having dinner. Nothing special, just pasta and garlic bread. I remember laughing at something Max said. Then, out of nowhere, I got this weird feeling, like I was being watched. It came from the hallway just off the kitchen. There was no one there, but the light was flickering slightly. Not in a broken way, more like someone was walking through it. I looked, but saw nothing. Still the feeling stuck, like a weight pressed behind my eyes. I rubbed them and brushed it off. Maybe I was just tired. Or maybe my mind was still adjusting to a new place. But over the next few days, it kept happening, always subtle. A creak on the stairs when I was the only one home. The bathroom door swinging slightly even though the windows were shut. That feeling of being watched, it never went away. I didn't tell anyone at first. I figured they'd just say I was being dramatic, or maybe jump at the chance to prank me. Max especially, he'd done it before. But then I started waking up at night. Not from nightmares, just waking up, eyes open. Room silent. My body on full alert like it knew something I didn't. I'd stare at the ceiling for a few seconds, and then I'd always look at the same spot in the corner of my room, by the closet. And every time, I saw nothing. Except one night. It was around 3:15 a.m., and I remember because I'd glanced at my phone before I rolled over. That night, I didn't wake up calmly. I jolted up, my heart already racing, like my body had screamed before I even knew why. I didn't see anything at first, but I felt it, that pressure, like the air was too thick. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow, measured, not mine. It was coming from my closet. I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't blink, just listened. The breathing stopped. But then, one of the hangers in my closet shifted. That metal scrape as it slid along the bar. I thought I was going to pass out. I finally moved, jumped out of bed, flipped on the lights. Nothing. Closet door wide open. Clothes still hanging. No sign of anything. I convinced myself maybe I had been dreaming. That maybe I'd imagined the noise. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. It got worse after that. I'd hear whispering from behind doors. Never clear enough to make out, but close enough to know it was there. I tried recording it once on my phone, hit record, left it running overnight on my desk. When I played it back the next morning, there was a 17-second clip around 2:48 a.m. You could hear me breathing softly in bed. Then a voice. Low, gravelly. It said my name. Twice. That was the first time I cried. Still, I didn't show anyone the recording. I didn't even save it. I deleted it immediately. I didn't want proof. I didn't want to know that it was real. It was only targeting me, nobody else. My parents thought I was staying up too late, said the late-night video games were messing with my sleep. Max told me I was just being a baby, and Dylan was too young to get it. So I kept it to myself, until one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I was brushing my teeth upstairs, everyone else already in bed. The hallway behind me was dark, but I'd left my door cracked. As I leaned down to spit into the sink, I saw it in the mirror. A figure behind me, not just a shadow, a person. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. Still, I swear I could hear it retreating. Slow, soft footsteps fading away down the stairs. I slept in my parents' room that night. I didn't even lie. I told them I saw someone. My dad grabbed a bat and checked every corner of the house. Found nothing. That's when my mom admitted something. She told me that when I was a baby, I used to scream at the same time every night. Around 3 a.m., always staring into the same corner of the room. That was in a different house. She said she'd chalked it up to night terrors. But now she wasn't so sure. We brought in a priest. He walked through the house, said a few prayers, splashed holy water in each room. It made my mom feel better. But it didn't stop. If anything, it made things angrier. A few days later, I was home alone. Everyone else had gone to Dylan's soccer game. I was in my room, headphones on, watching YouTube. Around 5:30, I felt that familiar chill. I pulled off the headphones. The house was dead silent. Then, bang. Loud. It came from the attic. Our attic door is in the hallway ceiling, pull-down style. It hadn't been opened in years, but I stepped outside my room and looked up. And the ladder was down. I didn't go up. I couldn't. I just backed into my room, locked the door, and waited for my parents to come home. My dad said maybe it had come loose. My mom just looked pale. The next night, I finally saw it. For real. I woke up just before 3. I know because I checked my phone and saw 2:59. I felt completely awake, no grogginess, like something had pulled me from sleep on purpose. I stared at the ceiling for a second, then slowly turned my head. It was in the corner. Not standing in the corner, hanging. Like it was suspended midair, upside down, its arms crossed over its chest. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes. It wasn't watching me like a curious stranger. It was watching me like a child watches an insect it wants to pull the legs off. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. I just shut my eyes and prayed it would go away. When I opened them again, it was gone. The next morning, I finally told Max. To my surprise, he didn't laugh. He said, "Dude, you're not gonna believe this." He pulled up a photo on his phone from a few nights before. He'd been messing around with some old digital camera he found in the basement, trying to get cool low-light shots in the house. He showed me a picture of the upstairs hallway. It looked normal, until you zoomed in. In the mirror behind him, just over his shoulder, a pale face, wide smile, no eyes. He said he thought it was a smudge at first, until he took another photo in the same spot. It wasn't there anymore. That was the night we decided to sleep in the same room. We were too freaked out, but the thing, it didn't like that. We both woke up around 3:30. The room was freezing. Max sat up, looked around, and then whispered, "Dude, the door's open." I turned. Our bedroom door, which we had locked, was open just a crack, and from the hallway we heard it. That voice. Low, scraping, like gravel being pushed across the floor. It said, "You're not alone. He just can't see me." That's when Max screamed. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and for a split second, we both saw it. Standing in the hallway, no face, just a black void where eyes and a mouth should have been. It slid back into the dark. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, our parents called a moving company. We were out of the house within the week. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. They saw it on the baby monitor. I didn't mention this before, but Dylan had one of those cameras in his room, the kind that records movement and sound, just for safety. That last night in the house, around 3:20 a.m., the camera picked up motion. It turned on and caught 11 seconds of footage. Something tall, something dark, standing beside Dylan's crib, watching him. The footage cut out as the camera tilted downward on its own. We never looked at the rest of it. We moved across town, new house, new furniture, new everything, no shadows, no breathing, no voices. But last week, something happened. I was visiting my parents, home from college for a weekend. Everyone else was asleep. I got up to use the bathroom. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt it again. That same pressure, same chill. I turned, looked down the dark hall toward Dylan's new room, and there it was. Just for a second, that figure, standing motionless in the dark, watching me. Only me. And when I blinked, it was gone. Like it had never left. Like it had followed me all along. My name's Hannah. This happened just a few months ago, and I still don't fully understand what I experienced. I work remote full-time, but I also pick up freelance projects here and there, mostly for local businesses. I'd been hired by this older couple to help digitize their family photo albums and transfer some old camcorder footage onto hard drives. It was boring work, but easy money. They were sweet, lived in a quiet, older suburb not far from where I grew up. The house was large, but had that weird, stale smell you only find in places where people have lived too long. Wallpaper curling at the edges, heavy furniture, dusty drapes. The couple, the Millers, were perfectly nice, but there was always this tension between them. Nothing obvious, just glances, lingering pauses. Mr. Miller especially gave off a weird vibe, like he was always watching, even when he wasn't in the room. Anyway, I worked out of their study, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4. My setup was by a big picture window that looked out onto their backyard. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the scanner and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. At first, nothing felt wrong. My routine was simple: show up, get the boxes of photos, scan them, transfer the video files, label everything neatly, go home. Mrs. Miller would usually bring me tea around noon. The only other person around was Mr. Miller, who stayed mostly in his armchair in the den, reading or napping. But one Tuesday, about 2 weeks in, I noticed something strange. I was scanning a batch of old photos, black and white ones this time, when I thought I saw movement in the yard outside. Just a shadow, really. I brushed it off, probably just a bird or a cat. Still, I glanced out again. Nothing. Except the backyard gate was open. It had been closed that morning. I was sure of it. I told myself maybe Mr. Miller went out and forgot to close it, but the next day, it happened again. Open. Then closed. Then open again an hour later. Always when I wasn't looking. I started feeling a little paranoid, like I was being watched. You know that feeling where your neck gets all hot and your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up? That. Every time I looked up from my screen, I expected someone to be standing on the other side of the window. By Thursday, I couldn't focus. I started scanning the backyard constantly. Just little things like how the lawn chairs seemed to be in a different position, or how the wind chimes would tinkle even though it wasn't windy. That afternoon, I was finishing up early and heading to the door when Mrs. Miller asked if I'd mind coming in on Friday to help her organize a few personal boxes in the attic. She said Mr. Miller would be out of town for the weekend. I didn't want to seem rude, so I said sure. Friday was when everything started to unravel. The attic was stuffy, hot, and smelled like mothballs and something else, something faint but sharp, like iron. Mrs. Miller pointed out the boxes and left me up there alone. As I was going through one of the boxes, just old letters and family keepsakes, I heard movement downstairs. Heavy footsteps. I froze. Then I heard the back door slam. I crept down the attic ladder and called out, "Mrs. Miller?" No answer. I walked into the kitchen. The back door was swinging slightly open. I stepped out onto the porch, but the backyard was empty, except the lawn chairs were facing the house again, like someone had been sitting there, watching. When I turned back to go inside, I noticed something on the porch table. It was one of the photos I had scanned earlier in the week, one I hadn't returned yet. It was of Mrs. Miller, maybe in her 30s, holding a baby, but someone had scratched out her eyes with a pen. I stared at it for a few seconds before grabbing it and heading inside. I was planning to confront her, but when I found her in the living room, she looked pale, shaky. Before I could say anything, she said, "Did you see him?" I asked who she was talking about. She just stared at the window. He used to come around before, she said. But not like this. Not this often. I was about to ask again when Mr. Miller walked in from the hallway. I froze. He wasn't supposed to be home until Sunday. He looked from me to his wife, then smiled. "Everything all right?" he asked. I left shortly after, pretending everything was fine, but when I got in my car, my hands were shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that scratched photo, about Mrs. Miller's face when she asked if I'd seen him. The next morning, I got a text. From an unknown number, it just said, "You left the window unlocked." I immediately got up and checked. Every window was locked tight. Nothing looked disturbed. I tried calling the number. It rang once and disconnected. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, maybe a wrong number, but then I noticed something else. On the windowsill in the kitchen was a photo, another one I hadn't returned yet. It was me, taken from behind while I worked at the scanner. I hadn't scanned this one. It wasn't part of their collection. Someone had been inside. I didn't sleep that night either, or the night after. I started keeping a hammer under my bed. I changed the locks. I bought a cheap security camera and set it up near my front door, but nothing happened for a week. Then one night, the motion sensor from the camera pinged. I checked my phone. There was a video, a single frame, a person standing just outside the range of the porch light, completely still, staring. The face was blurry, either from movement or from the angle, but I swear to God, it looked like Mr. Miller. I called the police, filed a report. They came, looked around, and said they didn't see anything suspicious, told me to keep my doors locked and call if anything else happened. That night, I barely slept. At around 3 a.m., I heard scratching. Not at the door, at the window, soft, careful, like someone was tracing their nails along the glass. I didn't look. I didn't move. I stayed curled up under the blanket like a kid. It stopped after a few minutes. The next day I found another photo. This one was slipped through the mail slot. It was from that attic box, a group photo, a family gathering. Only this time all the faces had been cut out. Every single one. Except mine. I didn't go back to the Millers. I texted Mrs. Miller and said something had come up, that I couldn't finish the project. She didn't reply, but 3 days later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single flash drive and a note that said, in handwriting I didn't recognize, "We finished it for you." Against my better judgment, I plugged it in. It was filled with photos, not their family photos, not the ones I had scanned. Photos of me, working, walking to my car, at home, sleeping, some taken from angles that meant whoever took them had been inside my house. The final photo was blurry, looked like it was taken from a basement, and in the corner of the frame was a person, or something that looked like a person. But it was too tall. The arms were wrong, the head was slightly tilted, and even though the photo was dark and grainy, I swear the face looked wrong, almost stretched, not quite human, like someone trying to look human. I called the police again. This time they took it more seriously, but when they traced the package, it led to a P.O. box that had been closed for years. They investigated the Millers, but according to the report, the house had been empty for over a month. Vacant. I told them that couldn't be right. I had just been there, but they said no. The house had been foreclosed. The Millers had apparently moved out of state weeks ago. The detective said maybe the couple I met had been squatting, or maybe someone was pretending to be them. I still don't know. I still see things sometimes, just flashes, reflections in the glass, faint knocking. I don't know if it was a stalker or a squatter or something worse, but some nights, I swear I feel it again, that same presence from the study window, watching, waiting. And every now and then, I still get packages, always unmarked, always photos, always me. My name is Aaron. This happened last fall. And even now, retelling it feels like I'm daring whatever it was to come back. I swear everything I'm about to say is true. I don't know if it was a ghost or something else entirely, but it was real, and I saw it, over and over again. I had just moved into a new place outside of Asheville, North Carolina. A little house in the woods, quiet, cheap, perfect for working on my photography portfolio. I'd been saving up for months, and when the listing popped up, I jumped on it. 3-month lease. Month to month after that. Just a simple one-bedroom house with a huge backyard and a detached garage. I loved it immediately. It felt like I could breathe again. Every morning I'd wake up, make coffee, sit on the porch, and just listen to the trees. No traffic, no neighbors yelling through the walls, just me and the birds and the wind. For the first week or so, nothing weird happened. I set up my gear, started doing early morning landscape shots, cataloging light angles, playing around with low light shutter speeds. I had a few motion sensor cameras too for wildlife. You know, deer, raccoons, maybe a coyote or two if I was lucky. That's how I saw it the first time. I had left one of the cameras recording on a tree facing the yard. I was trying to capture the slow change of the trees over the evening. But when I reviewed the footage the next morning, around 2:13 a.m., I saw a figure. It wasn't close, just barely within the range of the infrared lens, but there it was. A person, standing at the edge of the woods, not moving, just watching the house. I froze. At first I thought it was someone messing around, a hunter maybe, someone who had gotten lost, but the longer I watched, the less that explanation made sense. Because the figure wasn't walking or scanning the trees with a light or anything, it was just standing completely still. I went outside that afternoon, tried to find prints. Nothing. The ground was soft from rain earlier in the week, but no marks, nothing disturbed. That night I stayed up, looking out the windows every hour or so. Nothing. The next night I checked the footage again. Same time, 2:13 a.m. The figure was closer. Just a little, still standing, still watching. No face, no features, just a pale shape in the dark. I thought maybe the camera was malfunctioning, but that didn't explain the consistency. The same time, the same spot. On the fourth night, I set up 2 cameras. Different angles. I even left a flashlight outside, hoping if it was someone trying to scare me, they'd trip the light. But at 2:13 a.m., both cameras caught the same thing. The figure, even closer. That time it was standing in the backyard. No footsteps, no sound, no sign of entry. The cameras had audio, nothing but wind. At this point I was starting to feel scared, like truly, physically afraid. In a way I hadn't been since I was a kid. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to sound crazy. Maybe I didn't want to believe it myself. That week I started keeping the blinds closed. I slept with the lights on. Not that I could really sleep. I was too busy watching the feed. On the 7th night, the figure moved. Just slightly. A tilt of the head, like it knew I was watching. I screamed, and then I packed. I didn't even care about the lease. I booked a hotel for the weekend in town and left that night, dragging my suitcase across the driveway, eyes scanning the trees the whole time. I checked the footage the next morning from the hotel. I had left one camera running, 2:13 a.m. The figure was on the porch. It wasn't standing anymore. It was crouching. Right next to the window. The audio picked something up that time. Not speech, not movement, just this low, hollow hum, like wind moving through a tunnel. Not loud, but constant. That was the night I called the sheriff. I told them someone was trespassing. They checked the house, walked the woods, didn't find anyone, said they'd send someone by for patrols now and then, but unless someone broke in or stole something, there wasn't much they could do. I stayed in the hotel another night. Then another. On the 3rd night, I woke up to an alert from my doorbell camera. It was motion activated and sent notifications straight to my phone. I opened the clip. The figure was standing at the front door. Not knocking, not trying to come in, just staring at the camera, still no face. I could see the shape clearly now. Pale, translucent in parts, like the air behind it was shimmering. No clothes, just skin, colorless, like light reflecting off glass. I stopped going back entirely, called the landlord, and told them I was breaking the lease. I didn't care about the deposit. I had left most of my gear. I didn't want it anymore. They didn't fight it. In fact, the property manager sounded understanding. Too understanding, like she knew. I asked, just once, if anyone had ever said anything about the place. She paused, said I should probably take care of myself, and hung up. I moved back into a shared apartment near downtown. Haven't had a single issue since, but I still have the footage, all of it. And sometimes when I can't sleep, I re-watch that last clip, the one where the figure is at the door. If you watch closely, really closely, right at the end of the video, you can see its hand start to lift, like it was about to knock. And then the feed cuts to static. To this day, I don't know what it was, but I know it knew I was there. And I'm not sure it ever really left.